All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the latest in our Innovators Series edition of interviews. And today, Chief Innovation Officer, we are super Momentus Technologies, and with our latest Innovators Series interview, I am very Operating Officer with me today, none other than Melbourne Kerry Painter, what you now know as CVE, and lots of other letters that go up to us. Certainly a mega event, legend in our industry, and such a big part of. We're going to be very privileged to hear some of Melbourne Park cool things that Kerry has done and is doing your thunder right now in the industry. On this meetings, if you welcome and thanks for joining me, Kerry. Maybe walk us through. Before we get going, can you just give us a bit of your background to get to where you've got to today and where you're at now, that kind of stuff? The experiences that have shaped you and how things have been there, and of course, how was the open?
With the I do feel coming off a big month in January, probably a little bit weary still, even though we're nearly in
Tiger
March,
Stadium.
Like.
So that was a really great run.
First of all, thanks for having me, Steve.
San Francisco as always, City Hall, which was interesting because when I applied, I thought it was a Beaux-Arts theater, and then I realized it was actually City Hall.
Opportunity. So my career history has probably taken a few twists and turns,
really
and
cool.
a lot of a great collection of experiences, I think, that have really shaped me.
It got bigger and smaller.
To be the person I am today, but to have the role that I do, which I've got to say is probably one of the best in the world. So I spent about 20 years of my career in HR roles,
so no offense, but really
and across a real myriad of industries.
The Canadian half of me says
starting in a hospitality background, retail. I worked in Aboriginal affairs up in Cape York. And then eventually sort of found my way into sports and entertainment at the AFL. And so my previous role to Melbourne Park was actually leading
the same person in charge
and a big HR role with the
AFL,
AFL,
a little
which was such
and
an
now
awesome
I'm in
opportunity. And my passion for sports and entertainment, I would say, really kicked off in that role. And I was grateful to have met John Harnden, who's the CEO of Melbourne Park.
That's quite an amazing
and heard a little bit about what they were doing at the park and what the ambitions were.
You just
and obviously having
what I
the
was actually going to bring up next, which was that your venue in Raleigh now.
Something that I just jumped at. So I actually started my role at Melbourne Park over 5 years ago.
How is that different and to
in
what
the
you've
people
done in
and
the past?
culture
Just
space?
typically running one
but
venue.
I had said to John,
what do you find is different in
my
the role
ambition
there?
was greater than that. I really thought I was an operator
it's really fun.
at heart, and I was always wanting to get deeply involved in all
theaters
areas of the
are
business.
Full,
and like you then to have a leader like John who
and people
recognised that,
and just the dynamics
as
of
my
all
sort
the
of
different
time had gone on, he'd given me more opportunities. So after a couple of years, I took on the leadership of the Australian Open from a venue perspective and that Tennis Australia relationship. And a year later, on the position of Chief Operating Officer. So I now have, I think it's probably around 80% of the business sort of
some of the
fits
staff
within that operational area.
Some of the staff is divided by buildings.
Really very quickly had to learn.
Really
I'm not a subject matter expert in any of these areas that I'm leading. So from a leadership point of view, trying to understand how I best going to add value was probably one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learnt, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure,
and that
sure
was,
it is. As you have
that was when I was really grateful
different
for those
hats on
20 years in HR, when I'd spent
time
and understanding
the
humans,
center and so
what
on.
motivated them,
I'm sure it's
what made them tick, how to get the best out of them.
Of your venue,
and just really had a
major incident happened there just before Christmas, right?
As humans first and
can you tell us what happened and what
make sure that they could be the best that they could at home, the best they could at work.
We keep remembering never waste a good disaster.
With me from a HR career has ultimately made me the leader that I am today. And like I said, probably one of the best jobs in the world year round at Melbourne Park. We've got
people
over 500 events, and then like we just said, fresh off
back to the beginning. So December 1, we had a fire
from an Australian Open
center,
point of view.
And it was on the roof.
Best job in the world.
We had 7 fire stations
I love that,
and all because sometimes it's different equipment
and
different heights. It's a big
to
building.
you, I think.
They contained it in 30 minutes, and it could have been
Melbourne Park as well,
so much worse than it was. We were really, really very lucky.
I don't want to make you embarrassed, but they will say great things about your leadership.
The inside
so very much a testament to you, and I think.
It was pretty much all back of house, and then the problem was, of course, because it was on the roof, there were holes in the roof.
Such a great thing as well.
So it rained in and through the kitchen and through the staff offices.
Such a foundation in how to understand people and how to deal with people when you're in that sort of service first
so
hospitality
we've been plowing along
environment.
trying to make it work. we are ever
well done with
presently
your
aware
journey,
that we are the catalyst
you've
to
got
downtown
a long ways to go
surviving.
yet, I'm sure.
It's
but
a convention center.
in terms of your
We
career,
don't bring business.
I'd love to
Hotels don't have
just
business.
keep watching as it
Restaurants don't have business. People who spent their whole
keeps
life trying to
accelerating. So
open this
well done.
restaurant, if you don't have people on the street,
that
they
leads me into
suffer.
my next
And
question, though.
it was
you touched on 500
a
odd
constant
events
pressure.
at
It
Melbourne
still
Park.
is. And we've
As you
worked our
look
way
ahead to the
through
year,
piece at a
with the rest of
time.
this
It's
year,
been amazing.
what are the key priorities
I've
for
had
Melbourne
some really
Park,
smart words of
and how
wisdom.
do you
One of them
balance
being
that with
that there
such
is
like
no
this?
perfect
We
way to
just talked
handle a
about
disaster.
the few weeks of the Australian Open, and what a huge
I played
event
that
that
back
is.
in my head
But then
several
how do you
times
balance
because
that
you
with the
think you're
broader
supposed to be doing it
year-round
the right
sort
way.
of strategy?
You think there is a right way, and the truth
it's a great
is there
question,
isn't.
and I think
there's lots of avenues
we've
to
got
take
a
to solve it.
really ambitious
The staff
strategic
has come
program
together
around
incredibly, and this
all of our
complex
plans for the
thing
next 4 to
really
5
worked
years. So
beautifully
it's
because we
helpful to
lost our
have
offices, so we have
a
staff
really solid framework that
housed
sits
in the
underneath
theaters,
everything
and
that we
I
do,
have to
so
tell
we
them
don't
soon they're going to have
we
to
don't
come
lose
back, and they're
track,
kind
to
of
be
liking
honest,
it
of
over there.
what those
Some
big
were at home, and some
milestones,
were
what
on
the big
temporary
picture
tables.
things are that we need to be focused on. Because
It
when
feels
you
a
do
little
have
post-COVID.
500
Everybody
events
got
and the
separated,
AO, it would
but
just
tried
be
to make it
easy
work and come back
to
in.
rock up every day just to do the BAU.
kitchen has
So we're really
been
disciplined around having a strategic framework of what we're
starting
focused on.
in December, we
Funnily, one of the
lost 6
things that you
pieces of
mentioned
business.
before,
And it was
Steve,
really
around Melbourne
important to us to
Olympic Park,
follow our mantra, the same as
and
we
that
did in
change to
COVID.
Melbourne
Customer
Park is one
first,
of the really
we care about our
big
customers,
picture
and
items
they have
that we're
spent a
still
long time
working
waiting
on.
for this
So
event.
we
And so if
obviously
we can't
made
house it, what do we do to
that
make it
change in
successful?
name
And
from
so
Melbourne
we
Olympic Park to Melbourne
rehoused
Park
5
around
of the
this time
events.
last
One
year,
got canceled,
actually.
unfortunately. We
And
tried
what
all the
that
way to an hour and a half away from us and couldn't find a place to go for those
trying
cheerleaders.
to
But everybody else, we got
change
somewhere else. And
not
so
just
that was
the
really
business, but
great.
how people
And then the
saw us
first
from a
quarter of the year,
collection
we only
of
lost one
venues,
piece of
awesome
business out of
venues,
35.
but just really,
And so
we've
that's
got
a big
some,
deal. That's
Rod
$4
Laver
million in
Arena, people know
revenue
us
and
as, or Amy
28,000 hotel
Park, but
rooms. So
really
it was
trying
important to
to
keep
make
that and
Melbourne
to make
Park a
it work.
destination.
Now we're into high corporate
And
event
that's
season,
changing
and it's
that
a
in the
little bit scary
vernacular of
because the demands
Melburnians
change,
and
right?
Australians
A
and
late coffee
globally,
break
to be
can
honest.
be the end of the world
But it's
sometimes.
also,
And so
organisationally and
we're trying
culturally,
to be
how
on
we
top
make
of our
that shift
game while we
is
get the
just
building
not
back
as
together.
easy
The
as you would think. I think the
kitchen
name
has
sort of now
been
rolls off the tongue
such an
from Melbourne
incredible
Olympic Park
experience
to
to
Melbourne
see.
Park.
It's just
But
amazing.
for us, it's
We
now how you
hired through
build Melbourne Park
Sodexo, a
as a
vendor that does
destination.
Formula One.
And a
And so,
365
you
day a
build
week
Formula One is like building
destination,
a
not
city out of
just
nothing.
when people are coming to Rod Laver
It's a
Arena
really
for an
cool
event or over to
system
Amy
because they
Park to watch the
duplicate and
soccer
match the
or
kitchen as
rugby.
much
It's
as possible.
actually
So we do a lot of
Melbourne
fine
Park
dining. So we
as
have
a
10 double
destination,
stacked
just like
ovens
Madison
and
Square
only
Garden
2
would be in
fryers
some
and
of
1
those
tilt skillet
amazing
because that's
precincts
the kind
around
of
the
food that we
world.
cook. And
So
so we
there's
could
still
order
that
it. They
transition
would
that we're
put it into
working on
these
to be a
trailers and then
really
ship them on
strong
down
brand-led
and then
destination.
create this
And
kitchen
along
with
with
this
that,
full tent
and the
awning, and
second
it's
sort
all
of huge
inclusive, and
piece
it's
of work is
amazing. And so the
understanding the
chefs and
long-term
everybody are down there
vision
cooking,
for
and it
our
is
precinct.
sitting
And
on the
that's
floor
in
of the
terms of
amphitheater.
infrastructure.
So we had to
But most
close
importantly,
the
it's
ice
around
rink a week
experiences.
early,
What
get it out, get the
what
kitchen
are our
in.
fans'
You really learn a lot
expectations for
about
Melbourne
strategic
Park over
planning
the
and
next
project
20
management
years?
because you
And then
are
how do we start that
timing every
master
little
planning vision
nuance
to
to not
design
lose the end
a
game
new
or
and
the date.
exciting precinct
So they
that
are
meets the
cooking down
needs
there.
of
We
the
have 900
year-round
people in house
fan,
this
but
week.
also the
I don't know
Australian
how we're
Open
pulling it off, but
fan
we
for the
are. It's been a
next
miracle.
20 to 40 years,
And
because
we
it's
are
pretty
working to
obvious
get people in the
when, for
offices
anyone
in a
who
week and
came
a
on
half.
site over
So,
January,
and then
we
get
had
those kitchens back,
100,000
the
people
roofing, the cooling
coming
towers,
to the
everything had to come off the
precinct
roof.
every
Huge
day. We're at
cranes.
capacity. So there's one thing that we know for sure,
we're
we've
doing
really
it.
got to start designing
We're
for the
doing it.
future, which is
It's amazing
pretty
when you think about something
exciting piece of work.
crazy as having a
So
fire.
there's a couple of really big things, but
and here you
probably
are,
to the
just
question around how do you balance that with
days
AO,
later, and
one of
you're
my
running business and you're
really key
dealing with it.
learnings
It's
early
just
at
another day
Melbourne
at the
Park
office.
was if we don't have
It is
someone
funny
waking
because
up
the reporter
thinking
said
about
to me,
these
"What did you
important
think of when someone called
aspects
you
of
and
what
told
we
you there was a
do
fire?"
every day,
And I said,
we're
my
just
first
going
answer
to
was,
fail.
"Can
And
I
so
say
we've
there's no
actually
fire?
built
There's
out
no
an
fire."
entire
Because
Australian
they're
Open
concrete and
team
block,
whose
and
job
they
is exactly that.
really, this is such a rarity to have
They're
happen.
every single day of the year, not just in that
But yeah,
delivery
it did.
mode, but they're where they're caretaking that relationship with Tennis Australia, working through all of the planning, and just, you know, that's they're an extremely important stakeholder for us. So our Australian Open team is basically just embedded and meshed with Tennis Australia.
Just incredible.
So that we're on the ball.
About incredible,
all the
you've
time.
been incredibly giving of your time.
I feel like
back
is
to the
really
industry. I know
working
you've just come back from
on the
a
AO
trip to South
and
Korea.
nurturing that relationship with Tennis Australia.
And, you know, I joked at the start with
really
your letters, your CMP and CVE and multiple others.
Having a good balance between that year-round.
You've done an awful lot for the venue and the event industry in general. Can you tell us about, you know, what these experiences have been like, and why you place so much importance on giving back to this industry?
I'm sure it's evolved over time.
Yeah, it has really
which actually,
grown
let's
into
dig on
being
that sort of point a little bit.
Deepest joy. Although I didn't know it at
You
the
know, from
beginning.
an
I've always
operational
loved to teach,
standpoint,
and I've always loved to
how
public
has
speak,
the
and I
way
know
that
those
the
are
AO
kind
or
of
the Australian
normal,
Open
but
is
for me, they
run?
are my favorite.
How has that changed over the past
and I started at
years?
the venue school almost
Is
15
that
years
from
ago,
fan
I think.
expectations,
And
the
it
scale
was
of it,
just such a
sustainability
wonderful
being
way
a bigger thing
to
in more
interact with
recent
the next
times, and the complexity
generation
behind the
and
scenes?
to
Can
help
you
them.
walk
It's a
us
safe
through some of that,
place. You know, I think of how many times I've sat in a room
there's a lot of different
and helped
elements
somebody
to it, and I
with
have to give
a
credit
project or an
to
answer
Craig
because
Tiley,
he didn't
who's
want to tell
a
the
real
boss,
visionary,
but they also needed
and
help.
his mantra
And,
is really,
I love that
50%
our
different
faculty
every
can
year,
be
and
that
challenges the
students.
collective
But then I also
teams
started teaching
to work
CEM
together to
classes
raise
to
the
certify
bar,
exhibition
to make sure
managers.
that we are
And
really not
that's
only,
just
I
been
think,
incredible
meeting
because
fan
we do that
expectations,
worldwide.
but we're
And
setting
so
new
I've been to
expectations for them.
Thailand
So
and
people
I've
who
been to
came on site
Korea, and
this year for the
last year
Australian
I
Open,
had the really
I think
great,
saw things that
amazing
they
experience
wouldn't
in
have seen at
Saudi.
any other event, certainly
And
here in Australia
the
and
previous
probably
years in Saudi
globally,
Arabia,
to
I
be
couldn't
honest.
go
So
because I could only go if I had
there's
a
a
father
visionary
or
aspect to it,
a
but it's all of
husband
the
to
teams that
escort
have to
me
work together
out.
across,
So I could
Tennis
get there and I could stay in the
Australia,
room, but I couldn't
Melbourne
leave it.
Park, and
And
some of our
so
amazing
it has come so
contractors
far that I
from a
went on my own.
hospitality point of view
And
to our
I was
cleaners.
hesitant
It's
and unsure,
it really
but
needs to be a
what
team
an
effort to make
incredible
sure that we
experience in a
are
country
delivering.
that has just
I think the
decided to
fan
create a
experience
tourism,
is a really interesting
tourism,
one, and
sports,
you obviously
music
have the benefit,
out
Steve,
of
and a
absolutely
lot of us
nothing by
do in our
2030.
roles, to
And that's
travel
exactly what
around
they're
the globe
doing.
and
And
see
this
how
year
we're
I
constantly,
taught
from an event point of
virtually
view,
with
trying to
Saudi
raise the
in
bar,
13
competing with
different
each
days.
other.
And so
And
I
that's
ended
why
up
it's such an
delivering a class to
exciting
1,000
industry
students
to work in. But I
who
think
are going to
the
be
shape,
future exhibition managers. And
or the
that to
face
me
of
is
events, I
just
should say, have
astounding.
changed.
We can
I
change the whole
honestly
world
wonder how
and how
many
they
people
deliver
come to
what
the
we
Australian
do.
Open now to watch the tennis versus
And
coming
they've got
for the
difference in their
event. And
life.
so
So I
when you're
love
dealing
it.
with
I
that
love working with
dynamic,
the
it
30
really
under
does challenge
30s
the team
and
to think about how
the
you're creating
women,
something
the
different
100
for
Women,
everyone.
foundation.
But I mean, first and
that
foremost,
has gone on for
our
10
fans
10
still
years.
have those same
That's
fundamental
6
expectations
scholarships a
around
year to women
safety,
who may not
security,
have
and
ever gotten
cleanliness. So
into
from
these
my point of view
classes.
as
I
the
made sure
venue
one was a
operator,
security class when I started because there's so
you
many less
just
women
can
in
never take
security,
your
and I
eye
just
off
knew
the
it was
ball. All
important.
the amazing activations in the
It's
world
really
make
incredible.
a huge difference,
And
but
I
we
hope that
absolutely cannot get
somewhere
those
I touch someone's
fundamentals
growth
wrong. And I would
pass that on
say,
and remember
we've
and
really
makes a difference.
matured as an organisation,
Well,
but
there'll be
collectively,
lots of people, don't you
those
worry,
teams
that
who work
remember
on the event,
learning
we've
from
all
you. So,
matured, and year on year,
incredible
we're
that
learning,
you've
we're
done so much for the
implementing what
industry.
we're
So,
learning, and we're raising
and
the
continue
bar.
to
And
do
I
so.
think
Thank
that's
you
really,
very much for doing
the
all that.
customers at the heart of
You're certainly
everything
making
we
it a better
do,
place,
and we all have that as a
for
really
the next generations and
common
others
mantra,
coming through.
really, in how we
And just
approach
maybe to
the
finish
event.
up
And I think that
on
pays
this,
off.
Kerry,
The
what do you
CX
think the
scores year
future
on
leaders
year
of
are
venues need to be
amazing.
thinking about as they move
And
into the next stages
anecdotally,
of their
you're walking
careers?
around the streets of Melbourne or
I'm
talking
really
to friends,
excited.
and
There's
people
been
just want to
so
tell you how much
many
they love the event and
pieces
how
of
awesome
research
it
and articles
was,
and
and the
stories
brand
and feedback,
activations
and
and the
really
like.
in the
And
last 6
it's
months
really, makes you
about
quite proud to
experience
play just that
and
small part in it. But
in
the evolution,
immersiveness. And I love
1.3
that.
million
I've
people
always
this year,
preached
and a
about
massive
it being
opening
so
week,
much more
which
than
we've
a
never
venue,
seen
so much more than a drop-in in your
before.
city,
So
or so
you're
much more
always
than one
excited
concert.
to start planning for the
It's
next year. We never know
being part of everything and being
what
part
we
of the
might be
people
able to
around you,
create for the
feeling it and
fans
meeting
coming
them and
around for
making that
27.
connection.
Wow.
And you've seen it
It's
ramp up since COVID. We said,
I love
no one
hearing
will
that,
ever
and
leave their
just
house again,
I
and
can
they
hear the
are
passion
in
about it in your
droves.
voice too. It's
And
so cool.
so the conversation's a lot about that, and I
you
love it
talk
because I think
specifically
it's
about the
how do we take this
the
experience
evolution
to the
of the
next
venue
level?
and that,
How
and
do
the
you,
activations, and people
take a
not just coming
concert
for
and
the
become a
tennis anymore,
sphere?
but
How
for
do
the overall
you make a
experience.
moment where everybody has met each other
And I think we're
and we'll
seeing that
keep that
in the venue world
connection?
globally, right? Like,
It's
the one that
evolving.
jumps to mind is the Sphere in Vegas, where people are, venue is part of the experience now. And people go to the Sphere.
Makes it so exceptional.
They don't go to
so
see
I think,
U2 at the Sphere. They went to the Sphere and they saw U2. It's not U2 they saw at the Sphere almost. So it sounds like that's becoming more and more of a thing, which is incredible. And it actually leads to my final question, which is more around the tech side of things. Like technology is changing so fast. So in your world today, where do you see technology having the biggest impact? So again, on your fans. And maybe on the operational side, the key word you mentioned, the experience, and just in general decision making and what you do over the next few years. Is the areas you're right. We're lucky. We're in an industry where
I think
where people come.
This is such an important area of all of our roles. I think 5 years ago, I could probably have said, well, the director of technology looks after tech and we'll just leave it there and it doesn't impact me. But I honestly think the leaders of the future all need to be tech leaders because it's going to be so integrated. And it is so integrated now in absolutely everything that we do. I think there's a lot of different elements to it. I think there's the workforce part, which you just touched on in terms of how we
helping create.
I use the word enable. I'm not sure that's quite strong enough, but how we set our people up
there's a lot
in
of
the workforce to really thrive when it comes to technology, and whether that's the tools and the systems that they're using, or it's how AI makes our lives really very different, which I think it already is, to be honest.
Always,
it's sort
such
of
a pleasure to speak with
you,
and as always, thanks so much for your time and your generosity to the industry, and in this case, the generosity giving your time for this interview. Thank you.
And more critically and probably more obviously is that fan interaction and fan element of technology, which, I think I see that Australia's probably still got a little bit of catching up to do. And a trip that I had a year or two ago to the States, I was blown away by some of the really obvious tech innovations around digital screens and the use of facial rec technology and how that was being used to really make a seamless fan experience. I'm super excited here in Australia to see some of that, what other countries are learning and how we can take that here in Australia to really build out an exceptional fan experience as we build new infrastructure and create new experiences here. There's a lot of work around that sort of data and digital piece as well for us that we're focusing on. And again, how you make that seamless customer journey from the minute that they're thinking about buying a ticket, and how tech-enabled they are from that ticket purchase, how they're planning their journey to get to us, and how we make every single interaction and touch point along that customer journey tech-enabled to make it the very best that it can be. I just see that there's so much opportunity. And we actually brought in a new director of technology, I think probably mid last year, and it's a really exciting role for us, someone who can really lead this enormous tech strategy that we've now got to achieve. But yeah, certainly at Melbourne Park, where we've always been serious about it, but we also see it's coming at us like a freight train. So for us to really get in front, and particularly with that customer at the heart of everything that we do, I think, if, like I said earlier, if you're not thinking about tech and how that's integrated into every element, then you're going to be far behind.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I love, that you touched on the fact that technology is not just being looked after by the IT department anymore. It's everybody. We're all responsible now, and it's permeated every single part of our lives, both personally and professionally. So you're right. It's the emphasis is bigger than ever, and it certainly is a freight train that's hitting us hard. And it just seems to be getting faster and faster. Yeah, a lot. So look, on that note, Megs, thanks so much. This has been really, really super interesting, and love you sharing all of the little insights there that most of us don't get to understand or see day to day. And you watch the Australian Open and you think, it's just a tennis game in a venue, but there's so much more going on behind the scenes. So appreciate the little insights you gave us there and into that and your own career and so on. So thanks again. This has been wonderful to speak to you, and I'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Steve. Great to chat.